here, in dealing with the human tree, there is a theory that human beings came out of Africa. These were Homo sapiens already. They came out of Africa into the Middle East, and from the Middle East, they went into Europe, and in Europe, there was a separate branch of Neanderthals that branched off of the So there was a separate branch of human beings called Neanderthals who branched off from the Homo sapiens, and the two of them intermarried, and so Europeans are the result of that, and that is why in European DNA we find 4% of Neanderthal DNA. Another group entered the picture somewhere in Europe. They were discovered in Russia. They're called Denisovans, and the Denisovans intermarried with Europeans and produced Asians. That's why Asians have a certain percent of Denisovan DNA, and they also have the 4% of Neanderthal DNAs that Europeans have. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, my question is it before the creation of Adam or after?
Well, this now we have to, when we get into the next level of our discussion, we will try to home in on that question. But I've already given you a suggestion that when Homo sapiens came into in the Middle East, probably what we mean by Adam is someone from the Middle East, but there were already Homo sapiens in Africa. But I don't want to insist on that now. I'm just telling you that it's a possible scenario.
And from the Sirah,
yeah.
After the big flood, the children of Noah, so Ham is coming from the African nation, Sam from the Middle East, then Yafit going to the Europe, Mongolia, China, China.
Okay, so we'll deal with that when I come back, or like after I do your written exercise. So that's one map showing the human species. And previously we said if we look over here, we go from fish to amphibians to reptiles to birds on the one hand and to mammals on the other hand, and then from that branch we eventually end up with human beings. So I'm going to erase this now. And I'm going to write my questions, and hopefully some paper has been given to you and you're going to write me your answers.
Say something.
Yeah? Yes, Haj, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong. From what I observed, these the Darwinists or the supporters of the Charles Darwin or this is I see they are trying to explain the process. The process I think which is not going to end, or probably we don't know where it's going to stop. And it is not sure also correct or not. But the Darwinists still do not, I think, do not able to explain, this what we call how the cell starts. They fail. So if this thing they fail to do this, it's no point for me to listen after this. Allah Allah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so here's my question then. Okay, so explain the theory of evolution from a scientific viewpoint, even if you do not believe the theory.
So the question for you,
Right? So because we need to be like when we come like when I talk about Christians, right? When I debate with Christians, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me that knowledge to be able to debate with them. And one of the ways in which I seek that knowledge is to try to understand it from their point of view. So we want to be able to describe what's Christianity from the Christian point of view. So when they listen to me, they should get the impression that there's nothing else we need to tell this guy. It's not like, oh, but you know, Shabir, you don't understand this aspect or that aspect. No, I want to show I've covered it all. So now all they have to do is just listen. So even if we don't believe the theory, we should be able to explain it. That what you scientists say is this, or what you evolutionists are saying is this, what you atheists are saying is this, A, B, C, D, right? And this is our answer, all right? And then first you explain it from their point of view. So two, do whales and humans have anything in common? Explain that, right? So explain. And three, what are the various lines of evidence that, or what are the various arguments, we can say, that have been used to argue against the theory. And you know, in our context, you mean the theory of evolution, right? So I don't have to spell it out. So you have 3 questions. So please write your answers to those 3 questions, number 1, 2, 3, on your paper. And then I'll come back to you. So I'll take questions afterwards. Just, yeah, right. Unless it's a question about the exercise itself.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
No, I have a question.
Okay, but okay. So you understand the exercise, right? Answer these 3 questions in writing. It doesn't have to be very large. You have a large body of your answer because you have 1 sheet of paper. You can write on both sides. Fill up both sides, and then let me know when you're done the 3 answers. Okay? Did anyone finish the whole thing? All 3 questions? Excuse my interrupting. But I've sent you the notes for today. Yeah, yeah. So as convenient, I know. If it's not convenient, I don't want to press, but
Okay.
yeah.
Inshallah, I try to pin.
At least before they leave today, maybe.
Okay.
But some are leaving at 3:30 to go to Sabah. Those who are from Sabah are leaving after 3:30.
Okay.
So,
Inshallah.
sorry about all of that. Okay, let's work with what we have. Do we have something? Okay, I'm going to let you complete the exercise later, but we need to be in line for our next break, because during the break we're going to take some pictures. and then some people have to leave after that. So and then we still have an essential part to cover, okay? We still have an essential part to cover. So, I'm going to get your responses later, but let me, for the moment, go to the next phase of our discussion. So what is the next phase of our discussion? We want to know, is it possible that some Muslims have the view that even Adam is part of that whole evolutionary process? So far, let's recap. We said that one approach is which I used to have a long time ago, but I abandoned it now. That's the approach of trying to disprove the theory, show that there's a hole here, there's a hole here, and the only way to fill that hole is to say that God is doing this at this juncture or that juncture or something like this. However, over time, I have come to, together with other Muslims, to accept that it's possible that all of the evolutionary explanation is correct except when it comes to Adam alayhi salam. And that is the position which has been taken by David Solomon Jalajal. As an example, I showed his book on the slide, and a diagram from his book, and even a quotation from his later writing. So he, according to him, it's possible that before Adam existed, there were Homo sapiens on earth. Adam alayhi salam is created, dropped in the whole evolutionary history, and now he's on earth, and he has children as well. His children are Homo sapiens. His children, Homo sapiens, could have intermarried with Homo sapiens who already existed on earth prior to that. Okay, so that's the second position. Now, I know that many people are comfortable with that position because it seems that we preserve everything we already believe and we still hold that position. A third position is held by some Muslims, and I want to show you some examples of that. And, I will need the overhead, please, Bed Abdul Ghaffar. I know you're busy with this. Can I burden you to set up the overhead for me? And as soon as that is showing my slides, I'll put it up. It might take a moment. So the first thing I want to show you is from a tafsir of the Quran that is known as Tafsir al-Maraghi. Tafsir al-Maraghi is an Arabic tafsir of the Quran written by a great Egyptian scholar. And I will show you the the cover of that tafsir in a moment. But what is more crucial is what he says within the tafsir itself. And in the tafsir, he explains the verse of the Quran. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ خَلَائِفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ. Then we have made you to follow to follow in the earth after them. So to him, this means there were other people before Adam alayhi salam, and he says, وَمِن ثَمَّ استنبط الملائكة سؤالهم بالقياس عليه. So he said from that the angels deduced what now resulted in their question when they said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَا يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you going to place on the earth that which is going to cause corruption on the earth and shed blood? So how did the angels know? Because of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained to them already in verses of the Quran, including the one I just read. So then he says, وَعَلَى هَذَا فَلَيْسَ آدَمْ أَوَّلَ أَصْنَافِ الْعُقَلَاءِ مِنَ الْحَيَوَانِ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And from this, it is evident that Adam was not the first intelligent being from among the animals of the earth. So other statements like this together show that this author feels that there were human beings or human-like beings, intelligent beings on the earth before Adam alayhi salam. So the point is that there were such beings, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the angels, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, I'm going to place a khalifa on the earth. And now the angels are asking, are you going to place that which we've already seen? Like we've seen like that already, and they're shedding blood and causing corruption on the earth. So this is the one you're going to put now again? Like, so are you going to make him a khalifa? So what's the point? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. So that is Al-Maraghi's explanation, that there must have been such creatures before. I wanted to mention to you by contrast that those who will take a traditional view, they will find in the tafsirs, like in Tafsir al-Tabari, like how did the angels know that human beings are going to cause corruption and shed blood? They said that before human beings were created, there were jinns on the earth, and they were shedding blood. Well, of course, what we understand to be jinns don't have blood, like, you know, like... Not that we know, right? So, okay, so, but anyway, so you see that there is an explanation that one has to give if one takes another view. But this is an explanation that's given by some of the scholars. So I'm going to say from this side, so this is where we were in our slides. So we were looking at the tree by David Solomon Jalajil and his statement. And now the Tafsir al-Maraghi, this is the Tafsir I was quoting from, the page I read for you, Tafsir al-Maraghi. And this is, it's Ahmad Mustafa al-Maraghi, that's his name. And I can't make out the publisher here from the screen. It's so very small. Dar al-Ihya wa Turath. Dar Ihya Turath al-Arabi. It's published by the House of Reviving the Arabic Heritage, and it's in Beirut in Lebanon. That's where this is published. That's Dar Ihya al-Turath al-Arabi, the House for Reviving the Arabic Heritage in Beirut, Lebanon. So that's one source. Another source is the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran, which has been redone. Why is this not going? Because I didn't resume slideshow. Okay, resume slideshow. Yes. So, okay. So this is an English translation of the Quran. It's the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran. But this particular copy that I got this from was reprinted in Medina, Saudi Arabia, by King Fahd Holy Quran Printing Complex. And for some reason, they omitted the name of the translator. Only by a comparison you could know that this is the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran, but the name Yusuf Ali is not mentioned. Instead it says revised and edited by, and it's a bit vague here, the Presidency of Islamic, what? I have to read it on my screen and I'll see. Researches, IFTA, I-F-T-A, Call and Guidance. That's King Fahd Holy. Who said researchers? MashaAllah, what vision, brother. MashaAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Okay, good. So in that tafsir, dealing with the verse that says that we created every living thing from water, which is Surah 21, verse number 36. Why didn't that come up? From current slide. Okay. So. Okay, so I don't have it there, I have it here in my print. So, dealing with the verse that says we created everything from water, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse number 30, and note number 2690, this is what it reads. The evolution of the ordered worlds as we see them is hinted at And I'll leave the rest of that note because it's not so pertinent to what we're discussing. I go to the next note, which is 2691. In note 2691, which is on page 924 of this volume, it says, it speaks about human beings being created from water, and then in the middle it says that all life began in the water is also a conclusion to which our latest knowledge in biological science points. Apart from the fact that protoplasm, the original basis of living matter, is liquid or semi-liquid and in a state of constant flux and instability, there is the fact that land animals, like the higher vertebrates, including man, you notice it says including man, show in their embryological history organs like those of fishes, indicating the watery origin of their original habitat. And I stop there. So what he's referring to is that if we look at the development of the human embryo in the womb of the mother, we see that it goes through various stages. And at one stage, it actually looks like a fish. And to this author, that is because that was the origin, like our watery origin. So it's still in our genes, and it's expressed in this way while we're in the wombs of the mothers. Because they're in the genes. We remember how we said that all things and then the genes can be traced back to see the common origin, and we have 80% in common with whales. So we have so much in common with previous life forms, and or more primitive life forms, and that can make everything trace back to a singular origin. So how do we see that human beings had this watery origin? Remember we went from fish to amphibians on the one side, amphibians, and to reptiles, and from the reptiles we got birds on one side, mammals on the other side, humans eventually. So it goes back to fish. So the fact that there is the fish in our DNA is manifested in the womb of the mother, but of course not when we are fully developed and grown up. So those are two sources so far. The third one I want to mention is is a book published by a professor at the University of Sharjah, and his name is Nidal Jashum. Nidal Jashum, Nidaljuessoum, Nidal Jashum, and his book is entitled Islam's Quantum Question. Islam's Quantum Question, and then as a subtitle, Reconciling Muslim Tradition and Modern Science. So he embraces the theory fully, no hesitation, and in fact he bemoans that the fact to him he's complaining like, what's wrong with Muslims? They're not embracing the latest developments in science, and he sees no problem with doing that as a Muslim. And lastly, a book by Mustafa Mahmoud. Mustafa Mahmoud has written many books. One of them he's very famous for, a book entitled Al-Hiwar Ma'a Sadiq al-Mulhid, a dialogue with my atheist friend. That's a very useful book for those who are doing da'wah. And here is another useful one entitled Understanding the Quran, a Contemporary Approach. Yes, Understanding the Quran, a Contemporary Approach. Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud. Now, in this, he deals with many issues, not just evolution, but there's one chapter dealing with evolution, and he embraces the theory in terms of saying that Adam alayhi salam also was part of that evolutionary history. Now, if we take that view, then what do we have to answer for? Somebody will ask us, and somebody that actually asked me something about this during the break, I believe it was Brother Zonarif, and I wish you were here to hear the answer, but you guys can tell him later, or you might get it from the tape. How come the Quran says that Adam alayhi salam came from heaven? because according to the theory of evolution, like all life is, from fish in the water up until animals coming on land, and Adam from part of the same evolutionary tree. So if you take the view that Adam is part of that same evolutionary history, how do you explain the fact that the Quran says, "Qul nahbitu minha jami'a," get down, all of you, from here together? This is how it is usually translated in English translations of the Quran. However, so how might you answer that? So the answer could be, as given here by Dr. Mustafa Mahmood, that expression "go down from here" it does not mean necessarily go from up to down. It's almost like our English expression "go downtown." It doesn't mean you're going to a lower plane. It's just an expression. I'm going downtown. Okay, sometimes uptown is used for north and downtown for south, but in the expression "I'm going downtown," it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going south. You're going to the area that is called downtown. So he says too that if you look at the Quran, it's clear from the Quran that in the 61st verse of the same surah. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, it says that Allah told them, "Kunna bitu minha jami'a," get down from here, all of you. But in the same surah, in the 61st ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Musa alayhi salam, go down to Misr. "Ihbitu Misran fa inna lakum ma sa'altum." Go down to Misr and you will get what you are asking for. Okay? So go down to Misr. Misr is an Arabic word. Today, Misr means Egypt, but in the Quran, it seems to mean the city, or to a city. Go down to a city. So go down to a city, and you will get what you're asking for. It didn't mean that they were in a higher plane, and now they have to go down. It's just an expression, meaning go to a city. As for garden, like in which garden Adam alayhi salam was placed? Most of us have been taught that it was a garden in heaven, and we're trying to get to the same place. He came down, we're trying to get to the same place. But that conclusion is not so firm in the minds of some of our greatest mufassirin. For example, if you read Razi's tafsir, you will see that the garden can mean many things. It could mean that one to which we are trying to go, even if you say it's in the heaven. It could mean that one that we're trying eventually to get to. But it could also be another garden in heaven, not the final paradise that we're trying to get to. That's if you say it's in heaven. But according to Imam al-Razi, some early commentators on the Quran, including Mujahid, who was a student of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anh, he said that it could be on the earth as well. And of course, when they said that, they knew that this was in common with what is mentioned in the Bible. In the Bible's description of God creating Adam, it's right here on earth. And the garden in which he and his wife were right here on earth. So it does not require coming from up to down. It could be right here on the earth. So this is how one would answer that. Like Mustafa Mahmood taking that view that Adam is part of the evolutionary history, that's his answer. So that's one thing that has to be answered. Yes, my brother Nazli.
Yeah, there was before Prophet Adam passed away, he was longing for fruits from the heaven and asked his children to look for it. So it means that the fruits should be on earth, right? Not in the heaven. I mean,
that's interesting. It's an interesting point. I hadn't actually incorporated that into my whole thinking, but still, although that's very interesting, I wouldn't use that as my argument, because you know my stance towards hadith more generally, right? So this is in the seerah of the prophets, like the stories of the prophets, Qasasul Anbiya, and the stories which are in Qasasul Anbiya are not generally very reliable from my point of view. So whether this particular story is reliable or not, like what's the basis for it, I have not investigated, but my general impression is that stories like this are not, you're talking about something that happened like millions, like a long time ago, right? If human beings, Homo sapiens, have been on Earth 200,000 years now, so I shouldn't say millions, but at least 100,000 years at least. If we take Adam to be one of the first or earliest Homo sapiens. In fact, I want to add here something very important and interesting for you to know. Our good sister Zarina spoke about the mitochondrial DNA, and I'm glad to see we have people here who are educated in related fields. So mitochondrial DNA is passed on from mother to her children, and it stops with a man. So the man, he doesn't pass on. He has it, but he doesn't pass it on because when the cells divide to produce the male gamete, this does not contain mitochondria, so it doesn't go down from the male to the children. So we can see that all of our mitochondria DNA today can be traced back to a woman who lived more than 100,000 years ago. Maybe different scholars give different estimates of this. So I think it's pretty safe to say anywhere between 100,000 years and 200,000 years ago. If we want to say for simplicity, we might say approximately 150 years ago. So let's say everyone is traced back to a woman who lived approximately 150,000 years ago. And in the literature, she's referred to as mitochondrial Eve. Mitochondrial Eve, like this is the first woman, and from that one perspective, that we all share her mitochondrial DNA, so we're all descendants of that one woman. So this is established. Now, what do males pass on though? Males pass on the Y chromosome. Y chromosome. So a woman's ovum is comprised of two X's, and the man's sperm is comprised of an X and a Y. So these cells divide to form both, on the one hand, you can have an X from here and a Y from here that combine. You have an XY, and the XY is a male. So the baby in this case is male. And if on the other hand, where's my blue marker here? So if on the other hand, the X from the female combines with the X from the male, the result is an XY, and that is a female. Oh yes, XX, double X. I'm glad you guys are right here. Okay, so this now is a baby girl. All right, double X is a baby girl. So the Y chromosome then is only passed on from the father to the sons. So this is a son, this is a daughter. So the X chromosome can be passed on either to the male or to the female. But the Y chromosome is only passed on from father to son. It doesn't go to the daughter. So now we can also trace the Y chromosome to see where it came from. So our Y chromosomes came from this next generation, it came from that next generation. We can identify where it went, all the lines of descent to our present generation. So all of the lines of descent to our present generation go back to one man who lived also somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. So they call him Y chromosome Adam. So what is meant in the Quran when Adam is being referred to? Is it this Y chromosome Adam? And no one can say for sure what exactly the Quran means, because this is a new concept. It was not discussed before. But we know it now genetically that all males today descend from one man who lived about 150,000 years ago. Now we have on the one hand the Y chromosome of Adam, and on the other hand we have the mitochondrial Eve. So were the two of them husband and wife? This we don't know, because we're talking about a long stretch of time. Even if you say 150,000 years ago, you don't know which year within the 150,000, because a lot of years are 150,000, 150,001, 150,002, 150,003, all the way to 150,999. So, they may not have been even in the same year. Or in the same place. So these are some complexities that are there before us from the world of science. So what's an easy way out of this complexity for this view? So this view that says that Adam was also part of that evolutionary tree may want to hold, and there are many variations of all of these views, right? We mentioned 3 different views. The first one is the simplest. We reject the theory altogether. We just say that God created Adam and Eve, and we're all descendants of Adam, end of story, right? That's the simplest. We don't have to explain anything further. We don't need to know the science, and if anybody speaks to us science, we don't have to listen, right? So that's one view that some Muslims will take. Obviously, many of us here wouldn't take that view because we want to have a more educated view. So the more educated view is the second one. People say, okay, we're going to accept the theory. It looks good. It looks like good science all the way up to explain all forms of life on earth, physical life. But when it comes to Adam, we hesitate. Why do we hesitate? Because we have a revelation which seems to say otherwise, and we want to follow that revelation. So we stop here. We're going to accept everything else because we have no difficulty with that. But in the case of Adam, we have to stop because we have this revelation. So that's the second view. The third view is saying, okay, we're going to accept all of it. So when you come to this third view, now you're at another level of complexity. So if you were sticking literally with what the Quran and the Hadith says, well then you're just doing it literally, right? You don't have to explain much. So either the first view or the second view, you're still taking at least some things literally on the second view. And so you don't have to explain much because your answer is always, that's what the book says, we just accept that. Now if you come to this third view, now you have to go to certain verses of the Quran, and now you have to give metaphorical meaning to some things. You have to connect things in a different way. And, this verse connects with that verse, or with this third verse, or do we give priority to this one or that one, and so on. Decisions have to be made. New thinking has to be inserted. And so because we have new thinkers on the block, naturally you're going to have variations in the various approaches. A first approach, debunk the theory altogether, hardly any variation in that. Everybody's just simply going to say, we don't accept the theory, right? End of story, nothing more to explain. Once you start explaining more, no, not necessarily. And I don't mind if anybody here in this room takes that view, but I'm just explaining these are the choices and these are the implications. If you take the view, I don't accept the theory at all, you don't have to say anything more, right? I don't accept it. You talk there, okay, but what about this science? I just don't accept it. That could be the end of the story, right? So it's a simple view. I just don't, the statement I don't accept, it's the simplest view and least you have to say. Now let's say you take the second view, like we have explained by David Solomon Jalajal. He has a lot of explaining to do, right? How does he arrive at that view? Why does he accept everything else? He has to explain from the Quran. Okay, because our ancestors did not imagine this, right? So if you say, I'm taking a traditional line, I'm a traditional Muslim, I'm just following the way it's said in the Quran and Sunnah, now he is a traditional Muslim, he's been trained in that circle, but he has a lot of explaining to do, and he is explaining, okay? Those who take the third view, to say even Adam is part of that evolutionary tree, they have even more explaining to do, right? Because now they have to answer these simple objections, right? How, it looks like Adam came down from heaven according to the Quran, and you're saying from here on the earth. How do you explain? So explain yourself. So it's shown that Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud does have an explanation. Another objection that would be made against that view is based on the ayah which compares Adam and Isa alayhi salam. That's in the 3rd chapter of the Quran, the 59th ayah. So in that ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna mathala Isa inda Allahi ka mathali Adam. The example of Jesus in the sight of God, of Allah, is as the example of Adam. خَلَقَهُ مِن تُرَابٍ ثُمَّ قَالَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونَ. Allah created him from dust and then said to him, be, and he was. So, and he is. Kun fayakun. And he said to him, be, and he is. All right. So, how does one explain this now? If one wants to take this third view, the objection to that view is look at this verse, because this verse is comparing Adam with Isa alayhi salam. The classical commentaries on the Quran, like Ibn Kathir and so on, what they say is that the point of this verse is to tell Christians, if you are taking Isa alayhi salam to be God because he doesn't have a mother, think about Adam alayhi salam. He had neither mother nor father. And so if you're taking the one who doesn't have a father to be God, well then the one who has neither mother nor father is more deserving of being God. Right? So to disprove the Christian argument. Now, if you wanted to, that's the objection to the third view. If somebody is supporting the third view, how might they come back to answer this? They may want to say, well, you're quoting me a verse, but you're giving an interpretation of it. The interpretation and the verse is not the same thing. Let's look at the verse again. It's comparing Jesus with Adam, but it doesn't say what is the point of comparison. And whenever we're comparing two things, in writing and in speeches and so on, often there is a particular aspect of the two things that we're comparing. Let's say we say, this boy is just like his father. Well, somebody hearing that may think that, in every aspect. But we don't mean in every aspect. Sometimes it's because they're doing something bad. So they're doing something bad or maybe something good. In my case, it's usually something bad. See? He's just like you. You see? He's just like you. He's doing something bad. I won't tell you who says that. He's just like his father if he does something bad. But if he does something good, just like his mother. All right. Okay, that's just for comical relief. It's not really true. It's not really true. But you get the point, right? When we're comparing two things, we don't mean to say exactly. Even if we're using the term exactly, we usually mean there is one aspect of that thing that we're comparing. So what is the aspect? Everybody will agree that it doesn't mean that Jesus is exactly like Adam, right? It doesn't mean, and we know, Jesus born from one parent, Adam born from no parent, so they're not exactly alike. Everybody agrees on that. So the point is, though, so the question is, what is the exact point of comparison? And the traditional tafsir scholar said that the exact point of comparison is because Adam has no parents. But that's their tafsir. It's not mentioned in the verse itself. So one who wants to defend the third view and say that Adam had parents, one would have to say, well, the verse itself does not say he doesn't have parents. There is some other point of comparison. Is there some other possible comparison being made, or some other possible point of comparison? Yes. In the Gospel of Luke, the genealogy of Jesus is given. It says Jesus is the son of this one, Jesus is the son of Joseph, Joseph the son of Heli, and then it goes up and up, how Heli was the son of, then he was the son of, and he was the son of, until it comes to Adam. And then it says Adam was the son of God. So a possible comparison that could be made in this verse is to say to Christians, you're saying that Jesus is God because he's called Son of God. What about Adam, who is called Son of God? And in your genealogy, you're tracing Jesus at least to a human father, but you're not tracing Adam to any human father. So Christians should think about this. Already Adam is given the title Son of God. So, and moreover, another point of comparison could be that if all human beings are children of Adam, and Isa alayhi salam clearly is one of those children of the human race, then the example is the same. If he's a human being and he's God, well, he's a human being and he should be God as well. So there are many different lines of comparison that could be made. Another line is that in the Bible, Paul is writing and he wants to explain what is this point about original sin. So he says, well, through the first man, sin came into the world, and through the last man, the last Adam, this is what he calls him. Through the first Adam, sin came into the world. Through the second Adam, the last Adam, the sins are like washed away. Right? So he brings in glory, he brings in like grace from God. Why? By dying on the cross. So one committed the sin, one comes and pays for it. That's the first Adam, this is the last Adam. This is what he's called in these writings of Paul. So the point of comparison could be, if they're both Adams, how is one of them God and the other one is not? See, so there are comparisons, there are possibilities which the Muslim scholars did not jump on, because these possibilities have to do with a detailed knowledge of the Bible, and that Muslim scholars did not study the Bible in a detailed manner. We know this because some of the things they said about Christianity and so on in their tafsirs are not correct. It shows that they did not study. They're making statements about the Bible, but they have not studied the Bible. So they were great scholars, and what they explained in terms of Arabic language and so on were good, but sometimes when they spoke about the other religions, it's clear that they did not study the history of those religions and their scriptures. So when we see that there are these possibilities, then the one who holds to the third position, to say that Adam is part of that evolutionary tree and therefore he could have had parents, they have a way of coming back and defending their position. So in short, we have three choices before us, and whichever one you pick, that's up to you. I'm not here to impose any particular choice. I just wanted to share with you this broader study and to expose you to these possibilities so that you can be informed, so that even if you reject a certain idea, you know where it is coming from and you know how people defend those ideas. And it's good for you to know that, because when you talk to them, you can say, I know that your points are ABC, but let me give you my reply to the ABC. Right? And then your position is more convincing as a da'i, as a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or just simply a fellow citizen having reasonable, educated conversations with your compatriots, fellow citizens. Okay, so now we're going to take questions. Yes?
May I ask your opinion, because they have some Muslims that are using the argument of Thomas Aquinas against to the theory of evolution. Would you think that this is very a good point to use the arguments of Thomas Aquinas in order to refute this kind of the theory of evolution?
Okay, so which is the argument of Thomas Aquinas that they use?
Sometimes they are using the cosmological argument, the ontological argument, and the arguments of morality, and the arguments of creation also, in order to refute this theory that is not true.
Okay.
They will like making the proof of creationism, because they are going to the back of the principles that everything is not all things came from nothing. I like that. So therefore, if Adam came from God, therefore he was being created by God, then it's so very impossible to be a cell will be developed as a human. Like that.
Yeah. So it seems a far stretch to start with the arguments of Thomas Aquinas and use that to refute the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution did not exist in its present form in the time of Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was from about the 13th century, and the theory of evolution is developed in the 19th century, so 6 centuries later. Thomas Aquinas' arguments are for the existence of God, and none of these arguments disprove evolution, nor does evolution disprove these arguments. And that means that the end result is that we have good arguments to show that God exists. And while some who subscribe to the theory of evolution will want to say that now we have the theory of evolution, we don't need God, we can reply to that with the arguments of Thomas Aquinas. The arguments would not refute the theory of evolution, but would show independently that God exists. And now, marrying the two, we will say God exists, and the theory of evolution is a good scientific theory, so there's no harm in saying that God exists, and he uses evolution as his means of creation. So, to me, that's the positive outcome of that. Yeah. Yes, Brother Al-Ghafar.
Can we argue with the atheists, that those who hold to the theory of evolution, ask them about souls. When and at what stage does it appear in the timeline?
Okay, so generally scientists will not say that there is a soul. They explain everything in terms of physical matters, like we can touch the brain, we cannot touch the soul. They will agree that there is a mind, just from our experience. But of course, science itself cannot even detect the mind, that there is such a thing called the mind. So is there a mind? That's a philosophical question. It's a philosophical question. It now falls outside of the realm of science. So this is one angle in dealing with the theory of evolution, to talk to people who are using the theory to support their atheistic leanings. We should say that science, from which we get the theory of evolution, does not explain every aspect of life. Science cannot prove that there is a mind. And even if, like now, it's my experience that I have a mind. If you ask me, I'll tell you I have a mind. Okay, and I will tell you that Brother Abdul Ghaffar has a mind. I know that because I'm talking to him. I can see he's an intelligent person. He has a mind. But can I prove it? Can I prove that I have a mind? Can I prove that he has a mind? Can we? Okay.
Ask questions.
Ask questions and see that, like with the Enigma machine, right? There's a movie. Did anybody see that movie? What is it called? Enigma? Enigma? That movie? Is it called Enigma? There's a movie called Enigma. Is that true? Enigma. It speaks about the development of a certain person's ideas. I forget the name of the scholar, and he was during the Second World War. He developed this machine to test for what is called mind. Anyway, so yes, we can develop some tests like that, so tests for what we call mind. Okay, but let's take it another step further then. Soul. Can we test for the soul, what is called soul? So this is a whole long discussion. So generally, scientists will not admit that there is some such thing called the soul. It's philosophers who will say that there is such thing as a soul, especially those philosophers who subscribe to what is called a body and soul dualism. A dualism, that there is a body and then the soul comes in. And some will say that the soul is the real existence of the person. So that's a philosophical question, not so much a scientific one. But now, we as Muslims hold to the idea of a soul, of a nafs, or as a ruh. But how to explain that? This is a mystery. The Quran says, يَسَأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They will ask you about the ruh. قُلْ الرُّوحَ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Say that the soul is from the command of my Lord, or from among the affairs of my Lord. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And you have not been given of knowledge except a little. So we know very little about that. But now, my own way of explaining what the soul is, regardless now of the theory of evolution, we're just asking about the soul. Because regardless which theory you take, somebody may ask you, like, what do you mean by soul? Okay, so what do we mean by soul? Now, let's say you say that the soul is another entity that's breathed into the body, as is mentioned very clearly in our sources. Quran and Hadith, this is how it is mentioned, right? Like another thing that is breathed into the physical body. And usually it is understood like that's the thing that causes life in a way, or is associated with life. And it's being taken away is associated with the cessation of life. So it's being brought into the body in the womb of the mother, that is associated with the beginning of life. And it's being taken away from the body is associated with the end of life. Okay. So now there are some complications with that view, just to put it like that. That's how people have talked about it for a long time among Muslims. But now we see some problems. First problem is that in this whole debate about evolution, about abortion, we're not talking about evolution for the moment, we're talking about the soul and abortion, right? When can you abort the baby, and if at all? So those Christians who are insisting that you can't abort at all, what is their point? Their point is that from the very inception, this is a life. It's a living thing. It's not dead. We were talking previously, like, how do you know what's living and what's dead, right? So this is a living thing from the very beginning. So to snuff this out, you are taking a life. That's their point. The Muslim scholars have said that when the soul is breathed into the body, that's when it becomes alive. That's when life really starts. But we cannot agree with them in that specific statement, because we know we have to agree with the Christians here that life starts before that. There is a life. That's undeniable. But from a legalistic point of view, from the Sharia point of view, that is an important point. And not so much because life starts then, but because that's declared in the sources, at whether you take it 40 days or 4 months. Now, on one reading of the hadith, it's 4 months, because it says the conception happens, then it is alaka for 40 days, and then it is mudghah for 40 days, and then khalqan akhar for another 40 days. So there's nutfa for 40 days, nutfa for 40 days, alaka for 40 days, and mudghah for 40 days. 3 periods of 40 days equals approximately 120 days, which is roughly 3 months. 3 months? 4 months. 4 months, right? 120, 4 months. 4 times 30. Yeah, see, they got me there for a moment. I was almost going to agree with them that it's 3 months. Okay, so 4 months, right? 4 months. So then, on one interpretation of that hadith, 4 months becomes an important demarcator. And what this means is that on the question of abortion, some scholars said that abortion is not allowed at all. Some said that it's allowed up until the time the ruh is blown into it, means up until the 4 months. Some said that it might be permissible even after that if there is a choice between the life of the mother and life of the child. So if keeping the pregnancy is a danger, was going to risk the life of the mother, then you may as well abort the pregnancy to save the life of the mother, because that's the principal life. This one is the derivative one. The principal one takes priority over the derivative one, right? So various discussions among Muslim scholars, the various opinions taken, but you can see that the opinions are looking at that demarcation line. After 4 months, like abortion is bad generally, but after 4 months it is worse. You see, that's because now we're dealing with the soul already breathed in. On another interpretation of that hadith is actually 40 days altogether. So the demarcation is not 4 months, it's 40 days. How did they arrive at that? They say when it says thumma, it doesn't mean and, it means moreover, and it's talking about the same period. So it's 40 days for this, and also like in 40 days this and this. So they have a way of interpreting to mean that the 40 days overlap. And that means it's 40 days altogether, and at the end of 40 days, the soul is breathed into the body. So now again, the discussions about abortion will pivot around this demarcation line of 40 days, okay? So so we're establishing that there is a Sharia ruling that's based on that idea of the soul coming in at that particular time, but we have to agree. While we agree with the scholar we trust and the Sharia position that we adopt, we cannot deny that life existed before that. Right? From the very inception, there is life. So now, what is the soul? Those who think of the soul as being associated with the start of life, they have a problem here, because it's not associated with the start of life. What about the end of life? So when is the soul taken? Let's say somebody is in the hospital bed and they're hooked up to life support. You see, there are decisions to be made. When do we unplug the life support? So are we taking the soul at a certain time? There's some complications there. So with these complications in mind, and other issues in mind as well, in my own thinking, I have tried to explain that the soul is not so much something like that is literally breathed into the body the way it is mentioned. That's a literal statement, we know that. But what is the idea that was intended to be conveyed to the 7th century Arab person who did not know modern science and medicine? But what is the idea behind the expressions the way they are in the Quran and the Hadith? So to me, the idea behind it is that each human being develops a certain personality. And by personality, we don't only mean the visible personality, like we say this guy has a good personality, this guy has a bad personality. We mean the personality itself. Like my name is Shabir Ally. I was born in such a place. I migrated. I went there. I married. I have 4 children, 3 grandchildren. So all of these are definitive statements about who I am as a person. Like, who am I as a person? Now we can get more to it. I have a self-image. I am honest. I'm trustworthy, and so on. Okay, so not to praise myself, but we have a self-image, right? Actually, even a thief thinks that he is like an honest and good person. Anyway, so no self-praise here, but we're trying to say, like, what is the person? It's the person that I know, but it's not my hand or my foot. Because conceptually, may Allah save us and protect us, if I lose my hand or my foot, I'm still me. If it is possible for my mind to exist outside of my brain, then you can take away the brain too, so long as I have my mind. Suppose we can take my mind. We were asking about testing for intelligence, right? Suppose we have a computer, and somehow science could remove my mind and put it into the computer. So there I would be in the computer. I wouldn't be in my body anymore. My body wouldn't think.
No, you're talking about mind, or you're talking
Mind. I'm talking about my mind now. I'm talking about somehow removing the mind from the brain functions. It's not connected to the brain anymore. There is a mind that knows itself. And a mind that says, I am Shabir Ally. But it's not speaking like human language, because we need the vocal apparatus to speak like humans, right? But there is a mind that knows, I'm Shabir Ally, I was born there and there and whatever. So if that mind can be put into the computer, so that's me in the computer. But I don't have my body anymore. But that's me. If you ask me, I'll tell you, I'm Shabir Ally. I'll speak from the computer. I'm Shabir Ally. So to me, it is that mind which is the soul. That's what we're talking about when we mean the soul. So when does that mind start to develop? It starts to develop in the womb. And it is all of the experiences of the human beings collectively throughout life. All of my human experience, that all forms my personality. That is my soul. And that's a collection of everything I have done. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives me for some of my sins. All of that remains together as the conglomerate that makes up my soul. So that is what is taken. That's what goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it leaves this body. So I prefer to think of it in this way. So now, if we think of it in that way, and somebody wanted to take... sorry, can I raise these questions now? You got the questions? Yeah. So let's say we... look at the, we only have like a few minutes to end this discussion and go to the break. So, suppose a Muslim takes the view that, let's say there were Homo sapiens who came out of Africa. So Africa is here. They went into Middle East. I was going to say a particular name, but that's a modern name. You have to say Middle East. So Middle East, and then so they went into Middle East. Some human beings went into Middle East, and then into Europe. And then over to Asia, We also said that that's one aspect of the grand picture that we need to look at. And then the other aspect is that if we look at the line of development, we have let's start with Homo habilis, because now we're talking about Homo habilis, and then Homo erectus, and we have Homo sapiens. So what is the timeline here? So for Homo erectus, they say existed anywhere from 500,000 years ago until about maybe 50,000 years ago. Okay? And meanwhile, Homo sapiens existed from about 2,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, to present.
200.
Yeah. Well, see, I had the end correctly, and then I tried to write over it. To the present. Okay? And we also said, as a side note here, that Y chromosome Adam approximately, I'll put here this sign for approximately, 150,000 years ago. I say years ago. And we know that mitochondrial Eve is also from approximately 150,000 years ago. Yeah, for mitochondrial Eve, because we all have her mitochondrial DNA. So then, is it possible that there were some human beings that went into the Middle East, maybe about some 150,000 years ago, and among those human beings who were there around 150,000 years ago, Allah selected one of them to be His prophet, and his name is Adam. So that would explain why it says in the Quran, in the third chapter, إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين. Allah chose Adam and Noah, thank you, and the family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran above all creation. Okay? Now, even though it says above all creation, we know that it means above all other human beings, right? Because otherwise, you would have them above all of angels, above Jibreel alayhi salam, and so on, because Jibreel is a creation, right? So we don't want it to be so general. We know that the meaning, and reasonably, is above all other human beings. True? Okay. So what does it mean that Allah Istafa Nuh? Usually when we say our Nabi Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam, do you use that expression in this country? We speak of our Prophet as Mustafa. What does Mustafa mean in Arabic? The chosen one, right? Mustafa is chosen one. It comes from the verb Istafa, which means to choose. Okay? Inna Allah astafa Adam. That means Allah chose Adam. Adam wa Nuh, and he chose Nuh. So when it says Allah chose Nuh, what does it mean? Nuh, among all people, is chosen by Allah to be a prophet and a messenger of Allah, right? Okay, our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is called Mustafa because Allah chose him to be a prophet. So what is it now, going back to Adam? If it means in the case of Noah that Allah chose him to be a prophet among all the other people, then what does it mean in the case of Adam alayhi salam? Could it mean also that Allah chose him among the people who were there, and now Adam is a prophet? He has a message to deliver to others. Now, in looking at the traditional definitions of prophet and messenger, the scholars say that the messenger has a duty to convey the message. That's why it's called messengers. But they said also the prophet has a duty to convey the message as well. But there is a lesser emphasis. And the case of the prophet is less than that of the case of the messenger. So they say every messenger by definition is a prophet. You start with a prophet, Allah makes him now a messenger. He gets a special designation. Often the messenger is one who comes with like a new sharia or law. But it's not always the case. And the distinction between prophet and messenger is not so very clear. But we can see that there is some distinction, and it looks like the prophet has a lesser mission, the messenger has a greater mission. But usually a prophet is one who conveys the message to, like he has a message from Allah and he's going to convey that to the people around him. So if Adam alayhi salam was the only person at one time, and then his wife created from him, and then they have children, it looks like he's a good father, but why call him a prophet at this stage? If there's nobody for him to deliver the message to except the tarbiyah of his awlad, if all he has to do is tarbiyatul awlad, like the rest of us have to do, then why call him a prophet? Why use this term, Inna Allah astafa Adam? So this is not a proof, but it is a slight indication that will help to support the idea that there are other human beings and Adam alayhi salam is chosen from among them to be a prophet for the rest of them. So that would be sometime, that could be, as I was saying, it could be sometime within the last couple of 100,000 years, maybe coinciding with this time when we have Y chromosome Adam, in which case Adam alayhi salam will be from among the Homo sapiens.
Can I?
Yes.
I don't know whether this is okay. The story of the Sharia of Adam that Cain and Abel. Okay. The children of Adam they are being given birth in pairs. Okay. I don't know whether this is Sharia, but I don't know the Islamic understanding. Okay. But we understand that the children of Adam, they can marry with their sister, but not their twins. Okay.
Yes.
So if there is already some other human at that time, why that this Sharia has been mentioned?
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So, we dealt with this morning, but I know Brother Ibrahim came late, right? You guys remember what we said about this? It was Brother Nazli's question, right? And Brother Nazli might want to say something about this. What do you remember about this, Nazli? Okay, I'll answer. I don't want to put the answer. Okay, so the tafsirs of the Quran start with the assumption that, I'm talking about the traditional Arabic tafsirs of the Quran. They start with the assumption that Adam was the first human being, and from him his wife was created. They say from one of his ribs, and from the two of them we have all human beings. So now they have to explain if that's the case, that means that the children of Adam got married to each other, like boys married girls, they're sisters. So to avoid that, they said, well, the children were born in two at a time. In each birth you had one boy, one girl. So a boy could not marry the girl who was born along with him, but he could marry a girl who was born a different time. From the same mother. There would still be brothers and sisters, according to our definition of brothers and sisters, but at least they have some space between them in terms of their birth year. That, of course, is not going to satisfy everybody. And no, it's not based on anything firm. Like, you don't have a firm hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him, saying this. This is the kind of stories that we refer to as the Israeliyat, the stories that came from other sources, or it's generally falling on that category, but who knows where it came from, or who invented it, or, it's a way of getting around the problem. There's nothing firm about that. And because this happened a long time ago, probably 200,000 years ago, or nearly that time, how did that information get transmitted all the way down? If the Prophet, peace be upon him, said it, one might say, that's our Prophet, he informs us, it's in a firm hadith, we believe it. But it's not, it's only in the books of tafsir. Taking that story out of the picture then, this scenario that there were many people already, and Adam was one of them, this gets rid of that problem altogether. Because in this case, the view is that there were other people, and the children of Adam, to find brides, they could, the boys could marry from other Homo sapiens. And by the way, this is a view that Jalajal had advanced, even though he took the middle position. Remember that one? From the tree? He's showing that they could have been Homo sapiens on one branch, and then Adam is created, not on any branch, separately, but his children are also Homo sapiens. And since Homo sapiens existed before Adam alayhi salam on that possibility that he's presenting, well then, Adam's children could have intermarried with the other Homo sapiens who were already there on the earth before Adam was created. So there is a pressure towards accepting that there would have been people like human beings already there on Earth. And in fact, we know from the human skulls and so on that have been discovered, and from the DNA that is extracted from those skulls. That's the other thing. You see, when you look at the skull, you can't sometimes, it takes like a specialist to look at it and say, this is what we know we're looking at. And an ordinary person might say, like, how do we know? Like, that's just a skull. How do we know it's an ape skull, human skull, what kind of skull, right? Of course, they know. They have some principles. The ape skull is usually like the jaw is protruded. The human face is flatter compared with the ape. And the brow ridges, they look at the brow ridges, and they look at, because there are different parts of the face to which certain muscles will have to be joined. So if you need a strong jaw, that jaw has to be supported by strong muscles, and the muscles have to attach to a certain part of the face or to the head. And they can tell from the shape of the skull where the muscles were attached. If one is walking upright, then the head is held up like this. It means that most of the head will be behind the spinal cord. So they call that opening the foramen magnum. And they look at the skull and say, where is the foramen magnum? If it is if it's farther front, then this was an upright being. If it's farther to the back, then this was a hunched over individual, and it's coming in with the head here, and the backbone is coming in from this, all right, from top, almost. So from these clues, they can know. But what makes it more decisive is when they extract the DNA from the bones, and now they compare the DNA, and they can see where the changes have been made in the DNA. So they can see that, yeah, we're running neck and neck, and then suddenly there's a split. The DNA of chimpanzees split away from the DNA of human beings. Only 1.2% difference between the human DNA and the chimpanzee DNA. A slightly greater difference between the human DNA and the gorilla DNA. A greater difference between the human DNA and the orangutan DNA. So, based on this DNA evidence, they know how to construct the tree. They know that a split has occurred. Orangutans went one way. We continue. Gorillas go another way. We continue. Chimpanzees go another way. We continue. Now we're dealing with humans. Now we're dealing with people like Homo habilis, and then Homo erectus, and then Homo sapiens. So they can trace the lines of separation in this way. So then it becomes a form science. Yeah. So these are the three views. At some point we have to close because you have to have your break. Otherwise, it'll be like oppressing the students. And I don't want to do that. But also we have some business due, right? You need to take some photographs, and some people will have to leave because they're from Sabah, and they have maybe a flight to catch or something. I don't know, but I understand that there's some urgency for us to close. And I know you have questions. I'll take Hajj Abdurrahman's question as the last one, but I need to know a timeline. Like, how much scope do we have? Like, when must we absolutely break now?
You can just take the question.
Okay, and answer it later? Okay, good. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think this is very important for me. You see, there are three views put here. The first view is that we do not accept the theory of evolution, which I am of that person, because I see they cannot explain how this how the first cell starts. Then the second view is that this Dr. Jalalil, something like that, said there is beside Adam, there is another human being, Homo sapien. So which I think this one is going to contradict the origin of man as in the Quran. I think if it contradicts, then we cannot accept. That's number two. And then number three, this the third view, Adam is part of evolution. Adam becomes human, which contradicts also that this is a slow process. But Allah says, "Kun fayakun," it be. So I think these two, the other two views, I think is going to be mislead the Muslim Ummah. Allahu A'lam.
Okay, so that's obviously what I asked you to do for your question number 3, right? Yeah. Give the arguments against, and we can always we can all do that. We can all list whether you accept the theory or not. You can still list what are the arguments against the theory, and Hajj Abdurrahman has given an excellent summary from his point of view of those arguments, and his reasons more than that to be suspicious of the other views. So that's fine. Whatever view you take, I hope that coming out of the workshop you have a better understanding of the 3 views and the possibilities, and also of the theory itself, the theory of evolution as explained from the scientific point of view. Although I admitted from the very beginning that my own explanation of the scientific aspects may be deficient because it's not my field, and there may be people among us here who are better educated in the science than I am, but nonetheless I tried to give you the main points of that general overview, so you at the end you do have a general overview, and that's a general accurate overview without being too picky about the details. If you test me on the details, I will fail. Okay, so I have to bring it to a close at this point, if you please allow me, because our boss here, Abdul Ghaffar, has already indicated our need to take the break, take our photographs and whatever, and then we can come back for the last session, in which period I would love to hear more of your questions, your comments, and if we have time, I will have you read out some of your answers as well. So, over to Abdul Ghaffar. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.